Hello, my name is Nicholas Taggy. I'm a support engineer at S-Frame Software, and in this video today we'll be looking at the S-Foundation to S-Frame link. In the case we'll be looking at today, I've built and analysed an S-Frame model with fixed ports at the base that we now want to bring into S-Foundation to design the foundations. Once we've brought over our model into S-Foundation, we'll analyse, code check and design our foundations. When we're finished with this process and have foundations that we're happy with, we'll export them back into S-Frame for a more in-depth, rigorous analysis. It is the export back into S-Frame that we'll be looking at in this video today. Starting in S-Foundation, we can look at the load combinations that we have run our analysis and checks to. These were created in S-Foundation previously. We can also take a look at the substructure loads that were created inside of S-Foundation, and we'll take a look at how these are brought back into S-Frame a bit more later. We've run both all the rigid and all the flexible checks, and we can also look at the support forces that are acting on our foundations. We can then check that our foundations are passing all the code checks that we had assigned, and also check the results of our finite element analysis. Once we are happy with these results, we'll then decide to move our model back into S-Frame. There are three ways that we can choose to bring back our foundations into S-Frame. The first is just to bring back the foundations alone without any loading on them. The second is to bring back the superstructure and the foundations entirely. And the third would be to bring back the foundations as a standalone model which still has the loading applied to it. The first option we're going to look at is the foundations only option, which is useful for merging with existing structures, as it contains no loading. Here we can see we've exported the foundations with their finite elements directly into S-Frame. And if we go into the loading window, we can see that there are no loads applied to the support joints in this export. The next export option we'll take a look at is the super and the substructure option. Exporting with this option will represent the entire structure. It will create a new tail file, and it should be the most commonly used option. We can see it here inside of S-Frame. And if we zoom in on the foundations, we can see the finite elements that have been created, and we can see how they've been connected between the wall and the wall footing. The final option is exporting your foundations as a standalone. This will include the foundations with the loading that comes from the superstructure applied at the support joints. This will be a smaller model, and it will allow you to quickly compare the FEA results from S-Foundation to S-Frame. We can take a look at this inside of S-Frame, and we can see that at the support joints, S-Frame has applied the load combinations that were analysed inside of S-Foundation. Going back to S-Foundation now, we'll just take a look at a couple of the other settings that we can adjust when we're exporting from S-Foundation into S-Frame. We can find these settings under Preferences and then S-Frame Export, and can choose whether to open S-Frame when we export. And then the other setting we'll take a closer look at is the Additional Load Export settings. In this case, we can either append the load cases that are created in S-Foundation, or we can merge them with the existing load cases. The append option will create new load cases and combinations, which will allow you to see the super and substructure loads separately. It will allow you to easily remove the loads for the substructure, but it will also bloat the file because you'll be creating lots of more load cases. Here we have some standalone foundations that we've exported using the append setting inside of S-Frame. Looking at the load cases, we can see that there is an added one at the bottom called S-Foundation Soil. We'll take a look at this, and we can see that this is the soil weight that has been added inside of S-Foundation. The other option is the merge option, which will add the substructure loads to the existing load cases. It will prevent the bloating of the S-frame model, as new load cases will not be created. We won't need to turn off the load combinations used for the superstructure, but the downside is that you cannot separate the super and substructure loads easily. Now looking at this inside of S-frame, we can see that the substructure loads have been merged with the load cases that were created inside of S-frame. The four types of substructure loads that are brought over from S foundation to S-frame are the surcharge, the saw weight, the foundation weight, and the buoyancy.